Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to our next interview. I'm excited today to talk with our guest, Adrian Krahn, because we're going to be talking about. I love in the title, we talk about the unpredictable nature of being an entrepreneur or that entrepreneurial journey. I know for many of you out there who watch our podcast, who listen to our podcast, who check us out on all the different platforms, you're always looking for inspiration. You're often maybe even looking for insight. And what I'm hoping we're going to talk about today is give you a little bit of a glimpse, maybe even behind the curtains of what it's like to build a business, not only that's driven in passion, but rooted in technology and rooted in the idea of health. How do we build businesses that really help people not only live their best lives, but actually be able to access the tools, the resources, and in this case, the support that they need to make healthy lifestyle changes. I think as entrepreneurs, at times, we're always trying to find our space. We're trying to figure out where we can fit in and where these career paths kind of align. And I'm excited, at least all the research I've done on our guest today, I'm excited to hear about Adrian's journey because I really think Adrian kind of shows that through being an entrepreneur, through building businesses, and specifically this vegan business that he's been a part of, helping us see how he kind of came up with the ideas and kept things alive during the bumpy times. Because every business has bumpy times. That's the measure of our growth, but also giving us maybe some wisdom around what what he's learned along the way. So without further ado, I don't want to get into too much of an intro. I want to first say welcome, welcome. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here.
Perfect. And then I'm also excited because we're going to talk about things a little bit outside of our US America bubble. I really love when we talk about entrepreneurship from different perspectives. So if you do have any questions, especially from the international European perspective, we'll definitely talk about it today. Adrian is based in Switzerland, which I'm really, really excited into diving into kind of a business and the vegan landscape from that perspective. So maybe with that, before I jump into all my questions, I'll slow down, take a breath, and maybe give us a little bit of background. Give us a sense of why and what was that crossroads? What made you say, okay, as an entrepreneur myself, it was time for you to build your business, and why you took the leap into making it a vegan business?
Yeah. There are two sides to look at, actually, the vegan side and building a business. And the first time I came across like vegan food or vegan industry was about 20 years ago when I lived in Australia. And we had our first son there, and we were looking for a nanny. And then finally we found a nanny, and she told us, yeah, well, I also cook, but I only cook vegan. And at that time, we said, oh, well, I don't know if you like that. But then we took her, and it was perfect. It was the best food we ever had.
Wonderful.
And they had kind of like a vegan style, Italian, Indian style. And together with her husband, they actually then also set up a restaurant later on in Australia, and became actually quite famous in that part. And we really loved that food. So that was the first time when I really came across of like vegan food, and I really appreciated it. And I understood actually vegan food is really, really good. So not only healthy, and they do a lot of good stuff. So it is actually good. So that was the first time. And throughout my career, I did quite a lot of different things. I worked in the industry, in pharmaceuticals. I was a management consultant, and then I went back into the industry. But there was always a kind of like a passion to do something on my own, or with friends, or with a group to build a business. And then there was the opportunity about 10 years ago. There were two technical people from the ETH in Zurich, so that's a technical university where you're quite famous too. And they actually developed a couple of different technologies, and they were looking for someone who taking the other part, the business part, commercial part, helping to build that up. So that's then how it started. We started then with soft capsule technology, which is also vegan, has a substantial advantage on the cost side, and is vegan. And then we started in the second business, that's actually Innutri, where we had developed a technology to make gummies. And the speciality about these gummies, because everybody talking about gummies, especially in the US, is that we do vegan gummies. And they have still the texture of a gelatin-based gummy, so they're still chewy, which is very nice, and that's a preferable texture, especially in Europe and in other parts of the world. And this technology has also a big advantage in terms that we produce it at room temperature, so we don't destroy anything. We do not destroy the ingredients, the plants, or the vitamins. It's actually great, because that's kind of what we're trying to do, to actually work ethical. Yeah, that's what we started with, the technology, and then we raised it up, each level going up. And then, as you said, it's never a straight line. It's a bumpy road. And yeah, that's what we did. So.
But I love the fact that you mentioned the technology, because I think for a lot of people, when they think about starting a business, they're like, I just want to offer A, B, and C. But there is a technological kind of aspect to it when it comes to production, when it comes to, even like you mentioned, when it comes to texture, and I think sometimes when we're building businesses, we don't always have the foresight or the visibility to the idea that technology can really sometimes make or break a business. Would you agree with that, or agree with that perspective?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I want to make some comments on when you start a business, because there are some different businesses to start, or which you can start. You can actually start a business and create a brand. So you go to a contract manufacturer, get your products, and build a brand and get it into the market. I think that's a certain business. What we did is actually we went to the green field and we start from scratch in terms of the technology. So that's a much, much longer road. It needs much more investments and so on, and it's probably more bumpy. And when you have the technology, then you start actually kind of with the second setup of the business, that's selling the product actually, as you create a brand or you do private label, which is also not easy. So you have the technology part, which is difficult, but also the commercial part, which is not that easy. So technology can give you a huge advantage, but the road, I would say, is much longer to get there.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I bring it up, or I mention it, because I think sometimes when people think they're building a business, they think they just need the brand. They just need the colors and the design and the messaging. But often what makes a business great is the layers of those components. It's the layers of, yes, the design element. It's the layers of obviously having an amazing product, but it's also the layers of how you distinguish your brand. In some ways, technology can help you make that happen.
Yeah, I think what is really important, first of all, you have to solve a real problem of your customer. If you don't solve a real problem, I don't think you're going to make it. Unless you just spend billions of dollars, then maybe you're going to make it, but otherwise you won't make it. So I think that's the first part, what you have to consider. You really have to solve a real problem. And then the other thing is you have to get it across. And I think that's sometimes quite a difficult part, especially when you come from a technical point of view. You always think, well, I have this great product. Why is not everybody is just buying it? Well, and I would say, well, you have to get it across. People have to know that, and they have to know the story behind that, because people love to hear stories. And if they do not hear the stories and why they should buy it and why they should solve, they don't buy it. So first of all, you have to bring it into the world, so tell everybody. So that's already difficult, because that's actually also quite expensive, or can be expensive. And then you have to get a real good story that people actually think, yeah, that's actually cool. I really need that. I think that's a very, very important part next to the technology.
Now, one thing I'm gonna, and let me know if I'm putting you on the spot for this, but for a lot of my clients, a lot of the people I support, often will have this big debate about, they want to build a business for everyone. Everyone can use my product, everyone can benefit from it. And I often pull them back to say, you have to know your niche, you have to know who really this is for, in that ideal customer. Do you have any recommendations on how people can get more comfortable with that idea, and also how you tackled it when you were developing and launching launching your business.
If you want to sell to everybody, then you're absolutely mass market, so that the margin is most probably going to be zero or very, very thin, put it that way. So when you go into the niche, you probably find them people who really, really value your solution to their problem, and their problem is real. So that means they're going to pay much more because the value is bigger for them. So, and I think I rather have 100 customers which really value my product and pay a lot of money, put it that way, than have like 1,000 customers who don't really value it, and I really have to push them and bring out ads that they really just buy it. So I would always go for the niche, find the right niche where you can actually create a community where they really love their product and they do their marketing for you. When you actually achieve that, then I think then you're on the right spot.
Perfect. Now, what about getting that message out? You mentioned that challenge that, some of us are sitting on amazing products, amazing services, but getting it out to the world can be hard. And yes, sometimes people think they can just buy their way to success. But unless you have an unlimited checkbook, which most of us do not have, we often have to get creative. What's been your path, or what's been one of the ways that you found success in getting that message out?
Well, I think there are 2 ways, or 2 points actually what to look at. We do private label. So it's actually mainly B2B private label. And the other thing, what is possible to actually have your own brand and to build your own brand. So I think to build your own brand, it's much harder. It takes longer. You need more resources. In terms of private label, I think it's really to get in contact with the businesses who could be interested. And I mean, when you look at today's tools which you have, for example, B2B, LinkedIn, the tool is brilliant to use that. And what I also started doing is actually follow people who have done that, like creators, and tell you how you can do it. You find it on Twitter, and find it especially on LinkedIn, that is kind of a playbook which you get, and then you start trying out. So, and when you actually do that, and I think sometimes you have to adapt, obviously, because you're in a different region. For example, when you take the States, works a little bit different than, for example, in Europe, but you can still learn quite a lot, and then you have to try it out and see what works and what doesn't work. But you have actually a lot of free tools which you can use, so that's great nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I love LinkedIn. I think so many business owners miss the opportunity to leverage LinkedIn to really build those partnerships, and also, really kind of connect with people who are in like adjacent markets that you can work with. So maybe not everyone who's listening today has a product or service that could be private labeled, but often there are partnerships that I think work for a lot of businesses. And also, I think when we talk about private label, I don't think all of us realize that all types of services can be private labeled. You can build courses for other people. There's so many things that we can do for others to build our businesses that I think people miss that as a viable kind of revenue stream.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think private label is actually quite interesting, and especially when you are in a regulated market. When you go to with your own brand, then you also have the risk of the regulation of things. So when you go to private label, that's the customer has to deal with that, so it's a big advantage also. I like private label quite a lot, and especially when what we experienced, we used LinkedIn quite intensively to get leads, and it works very well, and we get leads all around the world. So from a regulatory point of view, we cannot cover the whole world, because I don't know what the regulation is. For example, in Indonesia, I have no idea, or as a company, we don't know. So, but we still want to serve the customer, but they take care. That works with private label. Then if you would go with our own brand, the story will change quite dramatically, because then we have to look at the regulation. We have to take care of that. So private label is actually pretty good too.
Yeah, wasn't necessarily thinking about that from the global standpoint of all the different regulations in all the different countries and how
Mm.
private label can allow you to get the product into people's hands because the end customer, your customer, which is really the company that's delivering it to the customer, can manage those regulations based on
Yeah.
their local footprint.
I think it's actually quite interesting when you look at Europe or you compare Europe and the States from the market size maybe the same or similar. But in the States, you really have more like one market, one language. Then you go to Europe and you sell a product in Switzerland and you sell a product in Germany. They both speak German, but the regulation is different. So you
Yeah.
have to comply with that. And then you go to France, then you have a different regulation and on top a different language. That it makes it much more complex, and you really have to think about, okay, which market do I go with private label or maybe with my own brand? And each country the system also works differently. For example, with pharmacies, that pharmacy set up when you want to sell in pharmacies, every country is different in Europe. So, and we're just talking Europe, then we haven't covered the whole world. So, and I think that's an advantage of European companies, especially Swiss, because our market is very, very small. So when you start a business here, you always think about the whole world, where we go next. And that's what we also considered when we started employing people. We always said we want to have as many as possible backgrounds, not in terms of just functional backgrounds, but different nationalities, different cultures, different views, and have them from all around the world. And in our company, we talk English as like the main language, but we talk also Spanish, we talk German, we talk French. So we have a lot of languages, but when we talk to each other, then we talk English. So this gives a huge advantage, because when we get a call or a request from somewhere in the world, most of the time someone can say, I know this region, I know this culture, I know how to behave or what to do. And this gives us an advantage. That's very important. So we are agile towards the customer. We can cope with that.
I like that idea. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget as entrepreneurs how important it is that our team reflects not only the communities and the countries that we serve, but our teams allow us to give a window into a different perspective. Because sometimes, as the leader of the organization or the founder, or, whatever those hats are that some of us wear, you know what I mean? We can sometimes only see things through our lens.
It
And
is.
some of that is just result of our experiences. But when you have more of that kind of diverse mix within your team, you have people who can maybe challenge some of those perspectives or take a leadership role at a certain point to represent or help ensure that the business supports the cultures and the wider community, especially a global community.
Yeah, actually, to add on that, because I just said I was also a management consultant, so I worked around the world, and it was kind of like, for example, we have a project in Korea, and you get down to Korea as a Swiss, then an Australian comes, a Korean, and maybe an Italian. So you put that team together, and you can imagine the first 2 weeks is quite difficult, because everybody has a different view and everybody has a lot of energy, but the view is quite different. So you have to get along, and then you have to discuss, and it takes more time in the beginning. And what I saw then is you get to a much higher level, and it's much better than to put like 4 Swiss on this project or 4 Italian or whatever. So that was a big learning from that time. And I always said, when I actually build a business, I always want to have different nationalities, different to get as many views as possible, and try to get them together and discuss and really bring it to the next level. And I think that's, if you do that with a startup, I think you can gain quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also a good point that you make, that in the beginning, it might be a little bit,
It's
I don't want to
shocking.
say tension, but there's a lot going on because there have that. And I think some people aren't always ready for the work that it takes. You know what I mean? They think that if I start with a group that's very similar, we'll all just work together and it'll be smooth. But I think, like you said, there's a benefit to going through that experience together where multiple people who have great input learn to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Especially in the beginning, what I've seen is, especially when people are not used to sort of different cultures, as for example, is the communication. Communication is a big issue then, because there are certain nationalities, they're kind of straight, and the other country nationalities think, oh, you can never talk there like that. That's not impossible. Huh? And the other person who was straight, what is wrong? What did I do wrong? So, and you have to discuss that, and you have to bring that up in the beginning, that different nationalities behave in a different way, and it doesn't mean the same. So what you say is something different what the other person hears. So, and that's important. That's what you have to get along in the beginning and address that, and then after a while, then it works very well.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can see that. And I can even see that in the same country as well, because we all even come from different backgrounds. Even when I think about here in the US, where someone talks about a style like a, East Coast, New York, DC style, maybe a little bit different than a Midwest or Southern style, even in speed and tone. I even joke sometimes, where I love learning about language. And there's a lot of, people that talk about how like in certain places, if you don't interrupt a person, it almost sounds like you're not actively listening. If you don't go, yeah, I know what you mean, where another person's like, that's so rude. And it's just the difference in the way we use language to
Yeah.
communicate and support each other.
And I think actually also the US has quite a big potential where, for example, when you look at the people that are not the US, the Americans, there are so many diverse people with also different backgrounds or from nationalities or whatever. So I think that even if I would actually start a business in the States, I still would go the same route and think about, okay, which niche can I serve? Maybe also the nationalities or take that part on. So I think that's quite a big opportunity too in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one thing that often comes up when people are thinking about running a business, they're really trying to understand the market.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get your perspective on the market, whether it's from Switzerland perspective, Europe perspective, global perspective. But what do you think is either unique about the vegan market? And what have you, through, your work of running a vegan business, has been changing or shifting or trends that you're starting to see in the market?
Well, in Switzerland, like vegetarian and vegan has been trendy for quite some time. And we started with the soft capsule, for example, many years ago, and we saw that vegetarian vegan is coming. Just the question is how steep it's going to be. So that was what we discussed. So we said, okay, we have to do that, and it is confirmed. I mean, when you look, let's take Switzerland, more and more people they are at least flexitarian. So that means they eat more and more vegan, they eat more and more vegetarian. So I think that's something which you have to consider. And when you take also the climate change and so on, there are more and more arguments why you should go this way, and people consider that more and more. And now, when you look at the last 20 years, and you go to a restaurant or get some foods, there are more and more vegan alternatives which are really, really good. So I think it is the best time to start a business, a vegan business, because the trend is my friend. It really is. So it's not going down; it's going up, and it's going up, and it's going up. It will not go down. That's 100% sure. And now, in terms of products, I think at the end of the day, you have to test it with your niche, huh? And I say actually niche, so because there you get really feedbacks and try to build a community where they really want to. They want you to succeed, and when you found this niche, this community, then you're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And I talk about that a lot in my training about like how to find not just your community, but also how to find buying customers.
yep.
Because sometimes you can have a wider community, which is a very interesting group of people, but it's also different the people who are going to support you in the long haul. Because there's a different group of people who become regular customers and eventually become advocates for your brand.
Yeah. Um, I have now. I read a lot on and watched actually all the startups, and what some startups actually doing is when they have like a physical product, that they try to sell the product before they have it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's an excellent idea. So have you mock up, and with the tools you have nowadays, crowdfunding and whatever you use, so you, for example, when you have like 500 people or 100 people, and they are willing to pay you a certain amount for a mock-up, where they say, that's a mock-up, that's going to produce, and when I have so many, then I'm going to produce that or let it produce. I think that's the first community. These
Yeah.
going to be your friends, and they're going to push it because they want that you succeed. Now, how to get that? I think that's probably not that easy, but also there, what I think is there are so many tools and playbooks around on LinkedIn, on Twitters, and that's something that you can try out. And then we start with your network, and then you get the first 10, then 20, and so on. And yeah.
Yeah. And go from
That's a
there.
great
Yeah.
approach, I think.
Yeah. And I agree because I think a lot of times when people think about their business, and I think sometimes they're, reading other people's memoirs, that they think their business should start where the person who wrote their memoir is today. And that's not how they started their business. I
Yeah.
think it's so important, to really do like a proof of concept for a brand, for a business, for a product. And not just that, because sometimes the shape of the final product might even be different and sometimes even better the more the consumer is involved. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone who raises their hands, your product's going to just keep switching back and forth between one idea to the other. But I do think you can really have some amazing brands when you also get comfortable with the customer kind of having like a seat at the table for making some of those decisions on how the business, the brand kind of moves forward. And I'm sure that maybe even with some of your process around moving from like, soft gel caps to gummies and things like that.
Yeah, I think you have to talk with the customers, and also actually when you take, let's go to the B2B customers, and I think also there, and what we did is we not only approached like the large companies, we always said we want to talk to the small companies, especially startups. And I always get a question, why do you want to go there? Because you don't going to make money there. I mean, you make the big money with the big customers and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I want to go to them because they try out new products. They're way fast. They give you all the feedbacks, and you learn hell out of these customers. When you go to a big company, you don't learn anything. So put it to the extreme, huh?
Yeah.
But what I always say, so I actually always visit the startups, the small companies, because they act, first of all, the owner actually talks to me, and he's very interested, and he's proud that he succeeded something with our product, and he tells me what he succeeded and what doesn't work. So I learned really a lot, and then I can take that home and then say, okay, maybe the next product going to be this way or this way, and that's a big learning, I would say. Always try to get in small companies also from a learning perspective as a customer.
Yeah.
Into
Yeah.
B2B.
Yeah. And I agree. And they can create such amazing partnerships down the line because when the two of you feel like you're in it together to win, to move forward, because some of the bigger brands, it doesn't feel that way. It's just a line item, it's a spreadsheet, you're at that level. But some of the smaller companies, you can really build some amazing bonds and you get that collaboration, you really can get some other amazing benefits from that relationship that you almost never even imagined.
Yeah, and it's much closer. It's kind of almost friendships. And then, when you actually deliver something which wasn't really perfect, so they also say, okay, let's discuss how we can do that. And the big companies just sends all the products back, and they do it better next time. So we want to have the money back. So that never happens with the small companies. We always then discuss, okay, what do we better? How can we solve that? And so on. And you really help each other. And that's where you really learn. And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. So, as usual, I've been chit-chatting and talking, having such a great time. I realize, that we're probably going to need to wrap up our interview soon. But before I do that, if people want to learn more about your business, if people want to learn more about the journey, the product, the brand, and so forth, what's the best way for them to either connect either with you specifically or with the business itself? What's the best approach?
Well, the easiest way is actually to get in contact on LinkedIn with my name, Adrian Krahn. So that's the easiest way. I'm actually also on Twitter. I actually starting using that more and more. So it's also at Adrian Krahn. And when you want to have a look at the business, especially the gummy business, that's Innutri, Innutri.ch. CH is for Switzerland, and the Innutri is with INN, and then Innutri. There you get also a lot of information about our products as well.
Perfect, perfect. And you're on all the social media channels, if someone looks up Innutri?
Not that much, because our main business is still private label.
B2B, yeah, so I was wondering, yeah.
So the LinkedIn is actually important for us, so and that's what we make our business mainly.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, I'm hoping maybe some people who are thinking about going global with their brand, some people who are maybe in the European space and they're trying to maybe expand, that this interview maybe will inspire them, give them a few ideas, and also maybe help them see a way forward. I think sometimes when we run a business, we can hit a lot of, we make a right, it feels like we turned down a dead end street. And we got to do that 3-point turn to back up. But I think sometimes, hearing from individuals like yourself, people can feel a little bit more optimistic. They can understand that it does take time. They understand that, we do hit some of those bumps in the road and so forth. So maybe as we wrap up our interview, do you want to share something that's maybe one of your biggest learning experiences? One of those things where you hit a speed bump, you hit a detour sign, you hit something, and you found a way forward, and you'd like to maybe help anyone else who's struggling or having some challenges themselves in their business?
I think you have to know life is not a straight line. It's never a straight line. Whatever you do, it's just not a straight line. I mean, I'm over 50 now, and I could never imagine what I all have done like 30 years ago. So it's never a straight line. That's the first thing. And then in terms of one learning is also how you take decision, because I often get asked what's the hardest decision and so on. And I try to make every decision easy. And how to make it easy, I think you have to categorize the decision making. For example, when you have a decision which is like short-term reversible, then you can take it fast, you just do it. For example, buying an office chair. I mean, you Google what is cheapest, what it fits, buy it. And if you don't like it, you get rid of it. So that's easy. When you talk then about a long-term decision, which is tough to reverse, then it's a different story. And then I think then you have to make the respective analysis for this part. And there are tools, again. And when you have done this analysis, then you probably also want to check that with outsiders, not in terms of getting their opinion, what they think. I rather ask them, have I seen everything to take the decision, or do I miss anything? So I think that's important. And then you have this, and then from an analytical point of view, then it's actually straightforward. And the last point is then, so how is your stomach feeling about that? So, and then that makes the decision taking much easier. And obviously for a long-term hard reversible decision, you have to also take more time, but it makes it easier. And I think that's a learning. What I took over the years is you have to know when you can take fast decision, and you have to know when you have to take a little bit more time and have a structured way how you're going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing the difference between when a decision really is a reversible one, because sometimes we can put reversible ones in the long term and they really are something that we don't, and we can,
that's very
we can put the car in reverse and we could go, do it again. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for your ideas. Thank you so much for telling us kind of the inside scoop on your business and also being an entrepreneur. And also, I just think enlightening us a little bit on the idea of private labeling as an option. I really think sometimes we're thinking about building businesses. We always want to build this brand from scratch. We think of that kind of concept that, we have to mold it and shape it and so forth. But I think helping people understand that through private label partnerships, there's really some great growth and there's some great ways to grow internationally.
Yeah,
So maybe you have built your US brand, or maybe you have built your Australian brand, depending on where you are, but maybe the way you grow, or when you're looking for that growth opportunity, private labeling might be that key.
exactly. And so if you want to come to Europe, then catch up with me. So I might be able to help you actually to get around in Europe. So
Oh, that is such a kind gesture. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope one day we get to connect. I know you were recently in the US, so hopefully maybe when I'm traveling next time, we'll be able to connect in person. But it was wonderful to speak with you. Wonderful to hear about your business, and also just great that you took the time to share all this with our audience today.
yeah, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure.
Great. And thank you, everyone who joined us. Even the folks who joined us live, I see you and I appreciate you showing up during these sessions. I know we pop in the middle of the day, but we always love to just give you some ideas, something to chew on, something to think about, as you're thinking about your careers, launching your careers, or maybe had to make a major decision today. So maybe some of the advice that you heard from Adrian might have helped you see your way forward, as well as anyone who's listening to this on our podcast or listening to this as a replay. If you have any questions, please, please, please post them in the comments, email us, or reach out to our guest on LinkedIn. Be a great way for you to get not only connected, but to continue to get ideas and support along the way in your journey. So until our next interview, I will see everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And once again, thank you, Adrian, for being with us today.
Thank you.